astrology is not mere fortune telling. Is it in evidence in today in other areas as well?
Astrology and evidence is everywhere. In fact, that's probably one of the reasons why I personally got into this subject myself, is through studying ancient art. Medieval, Renaissance art. I think on a previous show we even talked about Botticelli's Venus, the famous painting of Botticelli's Venus.
Yeah.
But it's not the only one. From Giotto, from the pre-Renaissance period, you see all the way down through into the neoclassical works of Nicolas Poussin. Basically the whole of art, the whole of pictorial art is absolutely loaded. I'm thinking even of Albrecht Dürer, the great German artist.
Yeah.
He left clues, astrotheological, astromythological clues throughout his art. We know that Nicolas Poussin did. We know that Leonardo da Vinci in the Middle Ages did. We have Giotto, we have Cimabue. So we've got a welter of information, coming out of the Botticellis, you see. All the way down through the great art, you keep seeing these astrological motifs, and you see these pagan motifs. The Bible. We were talking about the Bible. This new astrotheology book goes heavily into the astrotheology connections to the Bible. That Jesus is the sun god, the sun king. Mm-hmm. That his mother Mary, is clearly a representation of the constellation of Virgo. And near Virgo rises a constellation known as Butes. And Butes was always considered a male, god or a male character. Mm-hmm. Because wherever you see Virgo rising, this Butes will also rise with Virgo. So that was Joseph in the Bible. Because wherever Mary was in the sky, Butes, was nearby.
Followed, yeah.
So, it was the rising and setting of these constellations. Jesus was the sun because, of course, the sun in Egypt opened in the new year. The new year of the Egyptians opened in the sign of Virgo. Mm-hmm. So this is what the connection was between the young sun in the arms of the Virgin. The three wise men who visit, Jesus Christ in the Nativity story, and people who've seen my DVD will know that, I've covered all of this in the DVD. The three wise men, of course, were the stars of the constellation of Orion.
Yeah.
The three famous stars that are absolutely side by side in the sky. The four animals around the cradle of Jesus happen to represent the four cardinal points. The very archangels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The very symbols that Christianity has assigned to them are astrological. They represent the cardinal points, etc.
Yeah.
The 40 days in their wilderness. I've got a 5-hour DVD, as you said, out there. We cover so many of these parts of Scripture, not just of Christianity, but of others as well. Going into how, and remember, Christianity is not just drawing on the stellar cult. It's drawing on all the cults. It's a book full of information from the lunar cult, from the solar cult, from the Saturnian cult, from the volcano cult. We got all of the cults' symbolism and traditions represented in the Bible. But that 40 days in their wilderness, you see, comes out of the idea that the sun spans about 30 degrees in each sign.
Right. And
when it passed through the sign of Cancer, because it doesn't have a lot of bright stars, was always referred to in the astrological canon as the wilderness, you see. So this is why you find this term, And then, of course, the famous adversaries. Wherever there's a solar hero, you've got his enemy, be it Herod, or be it the Philistines, you see, or be it Judas,
right?
Or whoever, all the adversarial characters that turn up in the Bible also have their astrological counterparts. So it's all there in the Bible. But again, I find in my audience particularly, there's a lot of interest of how astrotheology turns up in the modern world, like in architecture. The churches, the synagogues, the state flags, the emblems, the heraldry, even in the design of cities, is tremendously based on astrology. This is starting to come out now. City squares, civic buildings, not to mention clock towers, fountains, bridges, embankments. If your eyes are half open, you see, and you really go around with educated eyes, you're going to start seeing something that's going to leave you in no doubt that these cults are anything but a relic of the past,
That's right.
And there's something interesting as well, that each sign of the zodiac, and I mean the 12 famous signs, and also there are others. I talk about these other signs that should be known. I actually talk about them in the DVD also, and they turn up a lot in the corporate symbols, but let's leave that aside. Basically, each sign of the zodiac was also given to a portion of the earth. Did you know that? That each sign of the zodiac had a terrestrial counterpart. So England, Scotland, Wales, all of these locations on our planet Earth were actually assigned to different constellations of the zodiac. And even they went even further than that. Even certain boroughs, even certain towns, they'd subdivide it. For instance, London is divided into 28 boroughs. 28 is the number of lunar mansions.
Oh.
It's based on lunar divisions, yeah.
Right.
So the whole of London is based on this. So you might even have a city or a state that is ruled over by more than one constellation or more than one sign. Now you won't know that, but you might be working around. You might be walking around in a borough of London. You might be walking around in Hayward, California, or Palo Alto, right, or wherever in America, without the faintest idea that around you is stellar symbols, not only on the corporations but in the city squares. You might be walking around Stanford. You might be walking around the Hoover Institute. You might be walking around San Francisco without the faintest idea that you're walking in a terrestrial map that is based on a celestial map,
right.
But it's in concrete. Yeah, David Oveson found this out when he started researching the architecture of Washington, D.C., that the entire Washington, D.C. is designed based on, the movements of the planets, of the star Sirius. And the whole architecture, as people now must know, I hope they know, is incredibly based on this old Masonic geometry. But you've got to go beyond that. It's not just Masonic. It's astrotheological.
That's right.
There's a reason why these people are based in the stars. Andrew Power, my friend in Ireland, discovered that when he started researching the Battle of the Boyne. To discover that there's not a single bullet or belt buckle to be found. This is a zone where there's meant to have been a war, for goodness sake. And not a single relic of war exists. The man found out that, hold on, the whole so-called Battle of the Boyne that's written up in so many histories of Ireland was a ritual battle based on the movement of Jupiter, movement of Saturn, movement of the Sun, moving in connection with the Milky Way. It was a ritual of handing over. One dragon bloodline, namely the Stuarts, were performing a ritual that involved hundreds of people down near Tara. It was actually very, very close to Newgrange. It was on the river because the river on Earth represents the Milky Way. The river on Earth also represents the Eridanus, which is a celestial river, a constellation up there near Taurus and Gemini. You see, so the king's horse going into the water. At the Washington Monument, don't you see the long strip of water in Washington, D.C.?
Indeed.
Yeah. Isn't the Houses of Parliament beside the River Thames?
Yeah.
Isn't Paris the government beside the river? Isn't in Dublin the four courts on the river Liffey? What's going on here? And the river Liffey comes from the word Lifa, life, meaning the goddess of life. There's all pagan symbolism you got going there, right. And the river is always running alongside because this is a heavenly river. So people are walking around in the delirium, not even aware of all of this astrotheology that is completely surrounding them. These characters had a habit of breaking the zodiac down into 36 houses, you see. Those symbols are always around in our society. I see them in corporate products and even in the architecture. There was 72 other constellations in and around the astrological belt, Henrik. All of those have symbols that people don't know about. So you may be familiar with Leo the lion, yeah, and you may know Aries, because people wear it at a chain around their neck. They think they know about astrology. It's really fun. Okay, so you know the 12 signs. Do you know that there's 72 other signs that are used every day? By the corporate giants.
That's right.
The media outlets and on products. And you don't know that this is astrology right in front of your eyes. Think of Madison Avenue. Think of Columbia Pictures. The woman with the sun above her head and the moon under her feet. Every Catholic will understand what I've just said there. The woman who's radiant with the sun above her head and the moon under her feet and the crown of 12 stars. Everyone knows that's a symbol of Virgin Mary. What's that symbol doing as Columbia Pictures then? I ask you, the logo.
Right.
Paramount, the mountain. Do you know that we're talking about the sun in Virgo when you're looking at that corporate logo? Do you know TriStar is the famous winged horse of Cancer and also Pegasus? Do you know MGM is the famous lion of Leo, you see? Or Orion, Disney, Touchstone. Let's go on. In the DVD I've gone into this.
Yeah.
Astrotheology. You're asking where it is, Henrik? Where isn't it?
It's incredible. And what comes to mind is also, of course, from the famous prayer that as it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth. That this is about taking what is in heaven and bringing it down to earth, replicating it, and that this is and has been in the past, I guess, an important ritual on many levels, and one, of course, is being that this is a veneration, I guess, to the stars, that we're acknowledging that what we're seeing up there is something that we can, we're replicating it down here. So I mean, in a sense, that this to me also doesn't mean that this doesn't mean that it's evil. It doesn't mean that that these people are they're doing it because they want to use black magic on you. This is it's connected with so much more. But we first of all have to become aware of it. That's the number one point here.
Well, exactly. And remember, what does it say on the cover of the DVD and the book? Astrotheology. The word theology appears in the term.
Right.
Because it isn't black magic. It isn't evil. It's theology. But it's astrotheology. This is all, this is where we need to move the human race forward. This is your original theology. This was the original church. This was the original temple. This was the original chapel, cathedral, the temple of God. It all came from there. So, we're at the moment where we can start discovering the roots. So I've been saying it for as long as I can remember that by coming to the 21st and 21st and 22nd centuries, we are in fact coming full circle to something. But full circle to what? Full circle to discovering where it all began,
So if we veer away a little bit from that area and talk a little bit about monotheism, making all of this, all the numbers of different things we have out there, either if we talk about God or the stars or the planets or what have you, monotheism did not begin with Christianity. It officially began, as you pointed out many times on the show, of course, that it began with Akhenaten, and you've written extensively on this pharaoh and on his era in your book on Ireland. But what would have caused, his avid worship of the sun? What caused him to abandon the egalitarian attitudes of the rest of the Egyptians?
That's a good point. And again, we can split hairs a little bit there. It didn't even really begin with Akhenaten, The monotheism was there a little bit before him. To be really strict about it, Thutmosis III, and very even possibly Amenhotep II, but Amenhotep II, I think, was such a lunatic, you can't really date anything from him. So people tend to think it was Thutmosis III, is more of a sure bet.
Mm-hmm.
Now you see that what we have to really remember is that all the way down until Akhenaten, officially everyone worshipped Amun-Ra. But that is like, saying to everybody in England, you officially accept that the Queen is, the Queen.
Right.
They're going to go, yes. But secretly they may think she's all right, whatever, right?
Right.
And they, think, well, hell yeah, but I don't believe in her or whatever, So this is what you have to understand. It was just politically correct because Amun was the god of Egypt. He was the, the tutelary god of Egypt. So everybody basically said, yes to Amun-Ra.
Mm-hmm.
Just like later on the Greeks, you couldn't say no to Jupiter, otherwise you'd find yourself in very hot water. But as long as you said yes to Jupiter, they basically didn't mind what else you did.
Right.
Jupiter's day, as long as you laid a few laurel leaves at Jupiter's thing, and by the way, this was the law, this was Roman law, that all the Roman states, you see, no matter where they were, even Cleopatra had to do it. Just go and lay a few bloody leaves at Jupiter's, statue there, and, the Romans couldn't care less what you do. It was somewhat the same way in Egypt. As long as you officially, and the Pharaoh, of course, had to. The Pharaoh was a representative of Amun. So on paper, absolutely on paper, Amun-Ra was the number one big cheese. But you see, personally speaking, in these families themselves, they had personal gods. And I would say that towards the Thutmoside dynasties leading up to Akhenaten, I believe that these Thutmoside 18th dynasty pharaohs, they personally couldn't care less about Amun-Ra or his priests.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what eventually led to the more worship of Aton. This is what it's all about. But to answer your question specifically, absolutely. Akhenaten was the man who basically turned Egypt upside down. He openly and drastically changed the worship. He forbade the worship of other religions. He totally forbade the worship of Amun-Ra and all the other gods. He stopped funding the priests. He came up with Aton as the number one god, you see.
Mm.
He moved the capital, all sorts of extremist things that he did.